course, owns the fastest hands in all of boxing.
Particularly the rocket left hook. Very hard to see coming.
Yeah, I mean, he can really throw it from anywhere. He can throw it from the hip, from high up. It's a dangerous weapon.
Is the marriage with trainer Derek James permanent or a momentary thing?
I think we'll see. There was a lot of talk about Ryan reuniting with Eddie Reynoso for this fight. But Reynoso, of course, was unavailable as he's training Canelo Alvarez. That fight's in Riyadh just 24 hours from now.
Good jab by Garcia.
I like that jab by Garcia. I think that separates him for what Rolly does. Rolly don't really work behind his jab, and I think that'll keep Ryan out front if he can do that consistently.
Ryan sticks an authoritative jab. He's already landed 2 or 3 of them. You establish that punch in the first round, and it means a lot to you for the remainder of the fight.
Most definitely. And he's going to definitely offset what Rolly is trying to do, is land a big counter punch. Good jab.
So far, the first round is a Ryan Garcia jabbing exhibition. We're more
I'm with you. What do you want me to do?
Welcome, everybody, to the Boxing Scene Today post-fight show. Of course, the Times Square edition. 3 headliners, 3 big underdogs, 1 big upset in the main event. We watch it from start to finish. Jimmy Smith, of course, Paulie Malignaggi joining us right now. Chris Algeria on the road, I believe, heading out to Las Vegas. We sat through the card just like you did. I'm at home. He's at home. Here to get your reactions and your thoughts. Paulie, I mean, it's supposed to be showcased, like I said, for 3 stars moving forward. The only star that looked impressive, Teofimo Lopez, I thought looked very, very good in the opener. Other than that, underwhelming performance by Devin Haney in a snoozer of a fight. And then an upset, Rolly Romero defeating Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia not looking good at all, especially after the knockdown, I believe it was in round number 2. Never really seemed to recover from that mentally. Paulie, your thoughts on this the whole card itself, man, right off the top. What are your thoughts, man?
My thoughts are this. This was with the intention of this card was good. The matchup seemed okay on paper, so the intentions are good. Sometimes it doesn't always work out for you what you feel like on paper. I do think that in terms of breaking down the fights, the first 2 fights had a sparring session feel to them.
Right. Yeah.
Teo versus Barbosa. It felt like the fight never got a second and third gear. Teo won it just on talent. Barbosa was solid, but just always a step behind. But he really never even went for the gusto and, say, okay, I'm behind. Let me take some chances. He just was kind of a content to just lose the decision that he lost. And it was basically a second or third gear sparring session. Really never went up the gears in the 4th and 5th gear. A fight never really broke out in that fight. But Teo showed his talent and he won it just on talent. Go show you how talented he is, that he can beat a guy like Barbosa, who's, to me, is very good.
When he wants to, kind of. Like Teal can show he can still get there, right?
Yeah, just on talent alone. But I would have still liked to see Barbosa go for it when he was behind, and Teo also, give us a little more because the opportunity was there. I felt like Larry Merchant in some ways, who I never rated as a boxing commentator, but I always rated as a TV personality. I felt like, if Larry was watching the fight, he would have been complaining about Teo just kind of going through the motions instead of, upping the ante and maybe trying to knock out Barbosa because he was, clearly superior on talent-wise. The Haney fight, I don't know what that was. It's funny, Jimmy. I've always compared Haney to myself in my career in terms of boxing style in that way. Devin Haney tonight fought like I used to fight when I had one hand. Only he fought the whole fight from round 1 there. So right. I don't know when I dare I say, did he go into this fight with a hurt right hand? I don't know, but he fought the whole fight the way I used to fight when I had one hand. When I would injure my right hand, then I have to kind of adjust my way and move around and fight very tactically and just steal spots and kind of clinch and move around and steal moments and not get hit. Very, very boring. If he had 2 hands, I think this was a little bit inexcusable. It's inexcusable also for JC Ramirez to not know how to cut off the ring after all these years you're a pro, regardless of how much Devin Haney was moving. Ramirez really was showing he couldn't punch and chew gum at the same time because he was either, if he was planted, he was punching, he wanted to punch, but if he wasn't planted, he wouldn't throw a punch. So again, that had also took another sparring session type of feel to it where nobody really took a chance in that fight. And then the last fight, what can I say, Jimmy? I mean, the last fight was basically, for the Ryan Garcia fans, the last fight was essentially, this is why steroids are banned. You see the difference. This exact. You saw your man's when he's tested and he couldn't afford to even risk taking a steroid because God forbid he would fail again. So he couldn't afford even to take a chance on taking a steroid. And last fight where, he was clearly on the steroids and he failed it and he had the energy level was of a different level. The power was a different level. No power there. He landed a couple left hooks. Rolly didn't even buckle on them, didn't feel them. He went down. And then no hunger at all, no desire at all, threw no punches. They were saying that there was one of the lowest punch outputs in the history of the fights they've been covering. No urgency at all. Derrick James tried to bring the urgency out of him. Let me tell you, man, maybe Ryan lives too comfortably. The YouTube life is good. It felt like when he got dropped with that hook by Rolly. We all know Rolly's kind of a strong guy, and these guys have sparred before. You know, there's like footage of them sparring. Maybe there's a little bit of back history there. I don't know, because it was almost like Rolly little broed him the whole time, and like Ryan just like didn't want to wake up the monster, so he just kind of, okay, if I can just get through it like this, I don't care if I lose. You know, really, really weird fight. Really, really weird fight. And a great win for Rolly, even though when you look at it now in hindsight, how good of a win is it? Because like I've always said, I mean, Ryan has all the marketability, looks wise, and has all the outside the ring characteristics of a star. But I've said before, he's not that good, and I think tonight showed it when he's when you're testing him, and you got to make sure he's off the stuff. He really wasn't that good at all. I mean, he looked very, very poor tonight.
Well, to me also, what I was thinking as I was watching the fight was this kind of looked like how we thought he might look against Devin Haney, right? With all the stuff going outside and all the problems, flat, kind of not really there, physically lagging a little bit behind. As you said, not a lot of power. This is kind of how we thought he might look against Devin Haney. Didn't look that way against Devin Haney, but as you point out, can't be on the sauce this time. He's going to get
no
caught.
consistency in this weight class, man. It's weird because tonight you look at Taylor's performance and you're like, wow, it's like he didn't even get out of third gear and he looked terrific. Imagine how good he could be. Ryan, they took away the win against Haney, but he got a lot of credit for that win, which I find really, really off-putting. That a guy with a win on steroids, that the win got taken away, and they talk about it constantly, what Haney went through, and then how Ryan looked in the last fight, and all this other Antonio Tarver mentioned about momentum with Ryan Garcia. What momentum, bro? What momentum did the guy have? He didn't win the last fight, guys. And I think it was a reality check tonight that this is what happens when you have a guy on steroids and then off steroids. There was no momentum coming into tonight, actually. We all bought into the BS because, we're all creatures of habit, right? If the whole mob moves in one direction, we kind of start moving in that direction too without realizing it. Everybody just bought into the fact that Ryan was coming in off of the momentum, and the odds were giving us that way. And so we look at the odds like, oh, there's momentum. And it's momentum. What momentum? The guy didn't even come off a win. The guy has no wins over world champions. Still has no wins over world champions. Never been a world champion. I mean, I don't know if he'll ever become a world champion. It's again, all his marketability is from outside the ring. Inside the ring is not much there. It's not much there.
Well, who disappointed you more? Devin Haney got a win, and also won. If you looked at the unofficial scorecards and the feed we were watching, we couldn't always see what we couldn't hear what the scorecards were. The unofficial score had him winning, I think, 11 out of 12 rounds or 10 out of 12 rounds. I mean, Devin Haney won a lot of rounds and ended up winning the fight, but Antonio Tarver kept pointing it out that he seemed nervous. He seemed fidgety. He seemed like he was over-moving. He seemed like he wasn't comfortable and flowing in the ring. To you, is that leftover from the Garcia knockout? Can he overcome it?
You can almost forgive that with Haney because of the PTSD from the last fight and whatnot, but I don't know. Like I said, I've never rated Haney as high as some people. It's a miracle that people actually bought into the fact that he belonged to the pound for pound list at one time, but I've never thought he was like that. But I thought he was a solid fighter, and I thought this was an underwhelming performance even by his standards. But again, because of the last fight, and there could be some PTSD because you still were struck in the last fight, you can almost say, okay, this was a get your feet back into the pool kind of thing, and then jump in the deep end the next time. So I think there's the jury's still out on Devin Haney, and we'll see how he comes out the next time. I think tonight it was just go get the win this time and move on to the next fight kind of situation. And because of what he went through last fight, I guess you kind of got to do that.
Yeah, but this idea that the whole thing was to set up, and they said this from the beginning, a rematch between Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney apparently was already signed. All they have to do is win. Devin Haney was the guy who won.
They almost did try that. You could tell if Ryan would have been even mildly competitive, they might have robbed Rolly there. That mutt Tom Schreck who had the wide scorecard for me in the Adrian Broner fight only had the fight by 3 points with Rolly and Ryan. So if there was even a mild level of competitiveness on the part of Ryan, I think Rolly would have got robbed because there was another mutt there besides Tom Schreck who also had it 115, 112. I thought Waleska Roldan's scorecard was more indicative of the fight. She had it 118, 110 or something like that. But yeah, so there was going to be an attempt at robbing Rolly Romero if Ryan even mildly tried. But not only did he lose, he also lost not trying. And so there was really there was no way you could give him any of the rounds. You couldn't even find an excuse. Because if he would have been throwing punches, you could say, hey, I thought they landed from my end of my view of the ring. All the BS they make up when they
Right.
rock somebody. But the guy didn't throw any punches. So there's no view of any of the part of the ring that you could say he landed more the punches that you thought he would land because he wasn't throwing any punches. So unfortunately for him, he wasn't going to be able to get that decision. I don't know. What do you do now? Rolly and Haney? I don't know. The momentum all of a sudden goes to Rolly, who was coming in with no momentum, having looked terrible, getting knocked out by Pitbull Cruz, and having won the title before the Pitbull Cruz fight in a really controversial fashion when the referee Tony Weeks stopped that fight against Ismael Barroso very early. So Rolly was coming in with no momentum and now takes over the momentum from a guy who probably didn't really have momentum coming in to begin with, but we all believe that he did.
Right, but we have a chat. Obviously, all of us here at ProBox TV during the fight, we're talking to one another, talking about what we see in the fight. And Chris said, boxing took a step back tonight. It really wasn't great
But I
for
can't.
boxing.
It was, yeah.
Was it or was it not? Big
Well, it
card.
was a step back because the card ended up being a dud. But on paper, you can't predict this either. It wasn't like tomorrow. Canelo Skull to me is a step back because you already know you got a plus 7 million underdog in the main event. That's a step back because you're going into the card already with a moronic fight. But like this card, I can't say it's a step back. It's just, hey man, sometimes they don't work out. Sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. On paper, these fights were intended to do well. It's just sometimes they don't mesh. Well, to me, it's not a step back. It's just sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. But to me, the step backs are when you knowingly make these mismatches and then you still do the fights. That's a step to me. That's a step back before they even get in the ring. Then tomorrow night is the step back.
Right, but the two stars who were supposed to be showcased. Oh, of course, Teofimo Lopez, excellent performance. But when you look at Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, they were the guys who were supposed to win and supposed to match up with one another later in the year.
Yeah, they even had that. The
little promo.
The promo on Times Square. I was getting a little bit jealous. I'm like, man, as a New York fighter, this would have been something to take part in something like this. This would have been amazing. And if you really look at it, they didn't really have New York fighters like that. Teo's born in New York, but he's not really New York anymore. Like he's old when he was an infant. So, there wasn't really that New York fighter. I was looking at it like salivating, like, oh man, this would have been amazing in my day. But it's almost wasted because everything you were trying to set up, it didn't pan out. It actually worked in the opposite way. But like I said, sometimes it's just the way the cookie crumbles because you couldn't predict this kind of a dud kind of card on paper. On paper, it looked good going in. So I can't say I can't criticize it. It just it's the way it goes sometimes. There are times I criticize it because we knowingly make dumb fights. These weren't knowingly dumb fights, at least not on paper, not beforehand. You couldn't predict this.
Okay, so when you look at it from a making a future perspective, all right, what we're gonna do now moving forward. David, he got the win, but snoozer of a fight. You point out all the technical difficulties he had in the fight, and his opponent completely unable to close off the ring, unable to throw a big punch, unable to catch him with anything. But this idea that the two guys we were supposed to set up didn't look good tonight. Where do they go? I mean, is Ryan Garcia? Would you even say he's shot and that he's done? I mean,
no. I mean, I don't know if
your prediction be?
I don't know if Ryan Garcia's shot, but he's got to reassess his hunger for the sport. What does he want to do? Like he never really got himself into this fight. Especially once he got knocked down, that's it. It was almost like they hit the off switch, and I was like, I'm not even trying tonight. There's no way I'm getting hit like that again. So that's not a world class fighter when you can be convinced that you're not going to try just from being knocked down. We've seen our favorite fighters get up off the canvas and try, whether they win or lose. They get up off the canvas and they try. This guy got knocked down and he was like, I'm done. And it was really a step back even from the old Ryan Garcia. Because remember, Ryan got dropped against Luke Campbell and came back and roared and stopped him, So this Ryan, this version of Ryan gets dropped and just, poof, kaput. That's it. He just capitulated, mentally capitulated in the fight. I mean, never really tried again, And like I said, Haney got the win. So sometimes it's win and look good next time. The jury's still out on Haney. I'll tell you what this does, what the lesson is, though.
Please.
This is why world champions need to be in the main event. The main event and co-main event were not world championship fights, okay? The world championship fight on this card opened the TV or opened the triple header. Teo was the world champion. And you know who was the best fighter tonight? Teofimo Lopez. World champions deserve their respect. Teofimo Lopez should have been in the main event tonight against Brian Barbosa. It was the best matchup on paper anyway, because Barbosa was always that enigma where you didn't know, how many upsets he could pull or what kind of version you were going to get of him either, So, if you would have made that the main event, in a championship, in a world championship fight, which is what it was, would have been more deserving. Those two fights were sparring sessions that sucked, and ultimately that's maybe the only criticism you can make. Aside from that, like I said, on paper these matchups will look good going in.
Yeah, but often on the broadcast, Jim Lampley said that Barbosa is kind of a working class guy, more of a blue collar kind of fighter, doesn't have the physical talent of Teofimo Lopez, but he didn't bring the pressure. Usually, if you're not the more talented guy, you're not the faster guy, okay, you make it a grind. You bring the physical pressure, you try to cut the ring, and he couldn't do any of that tonight.
I thought Barbosa was trying to bring the pressure, but he never got out of second or third gear, because Teo was using the ring. He was working off his athleticism, catching and shooting nicely, changing the angles. He was, shooting off the move. So I felt like it was Barbosa bringing the pressure, but he never upped the ante. As you're bringing the pressure, if you're losing, you need to start upping the ante and take more chances as the fight goes along. I didn't have a problem with him trying to play the position game, because you can see what Barbosa was trying to do early. He was trying to play the position game, like basically trying to move Teofimo Lopez into bad positions and then maybe start to make him pay as the rounds wear on. But Teo was such a good athlete that even in the bad positions, he created new openings and fired off shots, and it was quicker to the trigger than Barbosa was. Barbosa, I didn't think he was totally non-competitive. I thought I dare I say we can be clear here, right? We can freely speak here.
I think we can be frank here.
They were given a little bit of a verbal blowjob to Teo during the fight. I got to be honest. Like I didn't think Barbosa was as bad as they were making it out to be, because like I said, he was trying to play the position game. The criticism for Barbosa comes in that he was just not upping the ante as the fight progressed, where you're
right. Yeah.
I get what you're doing. You're trying to play the position game. I watched him and I'm okay. He's trying to play the position game. He's trying to start positioning Teo little by little in bad spots, and maybe Teo slows down and he starts to make him pay for it. Once Teo's not slowing down and he keeps winning the rounds, now it's up to you to take more chances, maybe up the ante a little bit. And that's where I feel like the criticism for Barbosa goes. He just was satisfied to just continue to, try to play that position game that wasn't working. And it worked in spots, but it never really gave him control of the fight. And eventually we run out of time.
So when it comes to Teo's future, what do you see for him? What do you think is the best fight after this performance? And once again, he was the best fighter on a card that was supposed to showcase the other two guys.
Yeah, I don't know, man. 140 pounds is an interesting weight class. I felt like Teo kind of stole it tonight. I didn't think anybody really wowed us, because like I said, I thought Teo could have upped the ante a little bit himself too, not just Barbosa. But, in a night where the other two fights were duds, you look at Teo and like, okay, he stole the night tonight. But what do you do? What do you do now at 140 pounds? There's names maybe, after Hitchens beats Kambosos, because let's face it, everybody beats Kambosos at this point. You don't even have an excuse to make the Kambosos. I don't know what Mike Coppinger was talking about, that they should make that rematch. How many fights in a row
I couldn't believe that myself. How many fights in a row does
Kambosos have to lose that you still want to see the rematch with Teo?
Right.
I feel like maybe there's an opportunity after Hitchens beats Kambosos, that if he does beat Kambosos, which is likely, that maybe you make Teo and Hitchens, because Hitchens is the New York fighter. Teo is a born in New York fighter. You could do that fight in New York. I think maybe that that could be a little bit of a sell there. They've both fought on the zone, so that the network work. Yep. Maybe that's something that you can keep in mind.
Also, when it comes to Devin Haney now losing the big fight that was supposed to happen with Ryan Garcia later this year, probably. I mean, I guess you could still make it technically. So what do you see?
You can't make it because neither of them look good too.
No,
it ain't like that one guy lost and you're like, oh, but they both looked horrible in terms of you were trying to promote this event. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
Haney won, but he looked horrible, and Ryan lost and he looked horrible. Like, so what you have no we talk about momentum. There's no momentum to make the fight right now. So I think you go back to the drawing board and you see what you do. Maybe if you're Haney, I don't know. Maybe you I don't know. Who do you fight? Do you fight I don't know, man. There's something to think about because Haney's at
it's tough.
I don't even know where Haney's going. He fought at a catch weight right now, so I don't know which direction Haney goes now. As far as you got to decide what weight class you're going to fight at, and then go from there.
It's going to be difficult. And Rolly Romero, you talk about the upset. You talk about his ability to win in the main event versus Ryan Garcia. But as you said, not a lot of momentum leading into this fight. He was the B-side. He was supposed to lose. He was supposed to lose handily. If you asked, ringside, it was, we don't see this fight going the distance. When they say we don't see it going the distance, it wasn't on his favor. It was on Ryan Garcia's favor. So ends up winning.
Like 6.5 rounds. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So this idea that Rolly Romero now has momentum on a card where he was the non-superstar of the bunch, the non-superstar winner of the night. But once again, where do you put him? Where do you think he goes next, Paulie?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. It's we talking about Rolly, the
Yeah.
non-superstar winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Rolly, you was the unexpected winner, so
Right.
you gotta give it some thought. But Rolly, I don't know what got into Rolly this week. He was very, very reserved. I felt like
Mhm.
it was the way I didn't really hear a lot of anything that happened. Maybe I missed it because there hasn't been a lot of coverage there. Like we know when Rolly gets going, he talks a lot of trash.
Right.
He's clumsily funny in a lot of ways. And you know, I feel like because he can punch a little bit, he's always and he's awkward. He's always a little bit of a danger. Says he's gonna stay at 147, bro. Any addition to 147, I'll take, bro. Because 147 is a dead in the water weight class. So I'll take any addition to 147. 147 is so bad, even Pacquiao's coming back. That's how bad 147 is right now.
No, it is bad. And Teofimo Lopez talking about they said on the broadcast wanting to take on Boots Ennis, and okay, great. I mean, Boots Ennis doesn't have a lot, as you said, at 147 pounds, but that's a big step up for Teofimo Lopez.
Yeah, yeah,
What do
yeah.
you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like weight classes are there for a reason, and Boots
Yeah.
is not just a regular 147. Boots is a 147/154, so he's on his way up. It's listen, Teo brings his best when he's back to the wall against great fighters. So I
Yeah.
nothing would surprise me with Teo, but I think that, the size difference may work against him in that fight, but it's interesting. But you know what? I don't know, man. I mean, at 140 pounds, like I said, yeah, let me see Teo unify against Hitchens first. And then, and then we can talk about that. I need to see Teo with some consistency. I haven't seen Teofimo Lopez with consistency since his rise up the ranks. Since his rise up the ranks, he has not had any consistency. He's hot and cold constantly. Before I'm going to be convinced of him and something like Ennis, which is not just a great fighter, it's also a bigger man. I need to see some consistency on the part of Teo. So I need to see him against Hitchens first and see if he can beat a guy like Hitchens.
What I'm curious about is the mugging, the clowning, the stepping, the dancing that Teofimo Lopez was doing. As I say, he was putting on a show, but also never really had his opponent hurt, didn't land huge punches, never knocked him down. Did it highlight the negative a little bit? That he was kind of able to take a break in the middle of rounds. You know what I'm saying?
My inner Larry Merchant was coming out, where it was like, I remember Larry Merchant complaining about Floyd Mayweather when he would outclass his opponents at 130 pounds. Like I remember specifically the Goyo Vargas fight, who was an ex-world champion, and Floyd was just, totally dominating him. And Larry was just getting mad about Floyd fighting just off talent and not stepping up the pace. And I remember at the end of the one rounds, he goes, "If I want to watch the Tour de France, I'll go to France." And that was Larry Merchant, So it's like I obviously I wouldn't criticize like that. I just want to see the best of Teofimo Lopez because I know what he's capable of. And so there, he like I said, he never got out of third gear tonight, and I feel like he could have if he wanted to.
One thing that I really remember when you look at a similar kind of thing with Floyd Mayweather, when Floyd Mayweather took on, I'm trying to remember who it was, Carlos Baldomir. Remember when he beat up Carlos Baldomir?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he had been comparing himself in the pre-fight hype to Sugar Ray Robinson. And so he's outboxing Baldomir, and Baldomir really can't find him or do anything. And it may have been Larry Merchant, or somebody on the broadcast went, "If Sugar Ray Robinson was this much better than you, he knocked you out."
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, don't compare yourself to Sugar Ray Robinson. If Sugar Ray was this much better than you, Sugar Ray Robinson, he laid your ass out. We wouldn't be sitting here for 12 rounds."
Yeah. I mean,
although that's not Mayweather's style necessarily.
It's different times, like I don't know. I feel like I know I'm going to get a lot of criticism for that. Anytime we talk about the old fighters,
Right.
I felt like boxing was a much lower level then too. People make like it was a higher level. Like just if you look off the looks Ray Robinson gave you. Ray Robinson gave you one look. You could never, no matter how talented you are, win a fight giving just one look unless you hit like Mike Tyson or Deontay Wilder. Like you can never be number one on the pound for pound list, let alone the number one pound for pound list ever, if you fought today off one look. Ray Robinson, he was very offensively charismatic and attack minded, and yes, he would get you out of there, of course, and all this other. Fought off one look. You know what I mean? And like the guys weren't up the level either to take advantage of it. And as they, and he got older and whatnot, you could never fight off one look today. If you're a one look fighter today, you're not going anywhere. Especially if you're a boxer who's one look. At least if you're a pressure guy who's one look, you make break guys down. But
Right.
you're a one look fighter today. No way. You're not even going to become a world champion, let alone going on the pound for pound list. You know.
But this idea that certain
Criticize
guys,
all you want, guys.
no, certain guys who get ahead and kind of mug and showboat, and certain guys get ahead and go, all right, I'm getting you out of here.
Yeah.
Teofimo tonight was
there's
more the
destroyers
showboating guy.
in that way, you know. Like, but you think about it, those destroyers aren't always as physically gifted. Sometimes when the guys are physically, for example, I felt like Miguel Cotto was a destroyer, right? He was technically super
Yes.
technical, and if you weren't of his level, you were gone, bro. You could not survive in a fight with Miguel Cotto if you weren't of his level. He was getting
Yeah.
you out of there, you know. But he also didn't have the physical athleticism and gifts of a Teofimo Lopez and a Floyd Mayweather either, you know. So like I feel like sometimes when guys have all that talent, sometimes it's almost it's like a box of chocolates, man. You don't know what you're gonna get.
Right. Right. But this idea that Teo looked very, very good, obviously tonight, look great, but the talent level, the talent disparity in this fight, if you can showboat and dance and do all that stuff, you're kind of highlighting the disparity in talent as a little bit of a negative. I remember thinking in the middle of the fight, like, yeah, if
Well,
you
I'll
know
tell
this
you-
high stepping stuff, then
I'll
knock
tell
this
you
guy
what,
out. Right.
because he realized you pepper a guy when you're athletic like that. 'Cause,
Yeah.
you know, I was an athletic fighter. You pepper a guy and you pepper a guy, but you're not you're looking for the moment to kind of obviously pounce. But if a guy, and obviously I wasn't a knockout puncher, I rarely pounce, right? But what I'm saying is, you know, you're peppering a guy looking for him to like diminish in levels so that you can start pouncing. But I never felt like Barbosa also gave you too many chances to pounce, right? So it's up to you to create
Yeah.
the moment. You got to create the moment. And Teo lazily didn't create the moment. He just was like, you know what, I can beat this guy off athleticism. That's what I'm going to do, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're that kind of fighter, you're under the microscope more because so much is expected of you. And that's where the criticism comes in. It's just, if you weren't so good, you wouldn't even be criticized for this tonight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know, because you're so good, like, oh, come on, man, there's more to you. We know there's more to you. We want to see it.
All right. So the question about Devin Haney, of course, the superstar who did win, all right, did win handily in his fight. The idea that this was a bounce back, that Ryan Garcia, there may be some leftovers. It was a long layoff. There was a lot of controversy. How much do you see tonight's performance as this might be a permanent problem, or do you see it as a bounce back? He can right the ship and be, I don't know if you would call him great. I know you have your issues with him, but this idea that he can be better than he looked tonight. Ryan, I think, took a step back that people are going to go, all right, this is bad. Devin, you could see maybe getting back to a higher level at some point. Well, give me your thoughts on it, Paulie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what level you want to put Devin on. I mean,
People put him on the pound for pound list. They do.
yeah,
I know
that's what
you
I'm
disagree
saying,
with
but that's
that.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When we look at it, you look at his record now, you know, there's a bigger picture here now. You know, when you're coming up the ladder, you know, people jump on the bandwagon. They're nut huggers, and you know, so they'll just jump on it. When you
Yeah.
look at it over the whole overall in the big picture, though, he beat mostly grandfathers. There's a rumor that he paid BoxRec to get a loss of his record in his first 5 fights of his career. That's a rumor that I've heard from various sources within boxing.
It would have to be an overseas fight, right?
It was
would
a
have-
back in Tijuana.
Okay. Yeah.
Allegedly. There's like I said, then he beat a lot of grandfathers way past their prime, who on his box record looked good, but then when you look closer between the microscope, under the microscope, they were not just past their prime, they were way past their prime, you know? The Lomachenko win is his best win, but he probably lost that fight, and almost everybody thinks he lost it. And then maybe Prograis a good win, but again, he's a past his prime fighter. Maybe not as past his prime as the dinosaurs he was fighting before, but still past his prime. And JC is kind of like JC Ramirez tonight is kind of like a Prograis kind of win. But with JC, it's forgivable because you're coming off that situation with Ryan, so you need a confidence builder. We'll give it to you. But have we ever actually had a situation where we can actually legitimately say, wow, Haney's something, you know, Haney, or did we just manufacture this guy? We don't know yet. You know what I mean? Like, you really don't know yet. And you may never know, you know? So, you know, that's why I said before, the jury's still out, you know? If we could all have the kind of money push that guys like this have, a lot of us would have great careers. You know what I'm saying? Like, guys who you never even heard of might have had great careers, you know? We don't have the luck to have this kind of thing. So it's also, there's a lot of manufacturing, and I get it, it's part of the business, but when it comes to Haney, there is talent there. You can't manufacture somebody who's completely not talented, obviously. But you got to see a little bit more here with Haney. This was forgivable tonight. I don't have the criticism for him like I have for, you know, Ryan, which was a total steroids, you know? But we're going to give him one more fight. You know, this was okay. Get your confidence back. This could be some PTSD. give him one more fight. But then I do have to see this guy fight against a guy in his prime. I do have to see that, a clean guy in his prime. With Ryan, on steroids clearly is a different proposition as we saw tonight than Ryan off steroids. But I do want to see a Haney against, I don't know, a Richardson Hitchens, for example, or something like that. Somebody who's in his prime at championship level, has youth energy, like Haney, and you see if you can match wits. He didn't even fight Sandor Martin. He vacated the title instead of fighting Sandor Martin. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like even Sandor Martin would have been a little bit more hungry than some of the guys he's fighting. So there's the jury's still out. But like I said, tonight it was definitely something forgivable, and he got the win. More importantly, you get the win. You deal with it next time. But next time, I think there is going to be more under the microscope for Haney, because now it's almost like, okay, we're almost losing our patience now. Now we got to see something. We're going to eventually have to see something, and I think it's going to be time for Haney to show something in the next fight.
Could there be any rehabilitation for Ryan Garcia?
I don't know, man. I mean, there could be, because he's so marketable. The people are going to look for a way to do it.
But what kind of opponent would do it to you?
You know what? You know what's funny?
Yeah.
Maybe who's the guy that he beat that then went on a tear and has been winning since? The guy,
Ryan Garcia?
Yeah, Ryan Garcia. He beat there's the muscle guy. The muscle guy who he knocked out. Check his record.
I'm checking.
He's been winning fights since. Maybe you do a rematch with that guy. I don't know, because that guy's been on a good tear since losing to Ryan Garcia. That might be Ryan Garcia's best win at this point.
But like, that
talk about, what's the guy's name? It's in his last few fights.
Was it Duarte?
Duarte, yes. Oscar Duarte.
Yeah.
Oscar Duarte,
Yeah.
yes.
Because he's won 3 in a row, yeah.
And he's looked pretty good in doing it. So, you know
Right.
what? It's starting to stack up as Haney's best win. So
Right.
maybe, and Duarte is on a momentum streak where he may deserve a rematch. He may have worked his way back into a rematch. I say, you know what? Make that rematch. See where Ryan's at.
But it's almost like he couldn't, so much of our sport, right? And between the two of us, we have half a century in combat sports, okay? This idea that, to me, as an outsider and as a coach and all these things, whenever it's, you can do anything, but God, don't do this. Everyone expects you, for example, to be weak to the body. You get dropped by a body shot. Oh, what did I tell you? The guy's weak to the body, right? When you confirm what people already think about you as a weakness, it's death, because people go, oh, yeah, you got no gas tank. Bang. I remember De La Hoya Trinidad. De La Hoya is a pretty boy. He's a white-sikin. There's no way he's, when the going gets tough, he's going to stop fighting. And against Felix Trinidad, as I was watching the fight, I went, oh my God, you did the one thing you couldn't do. When it got tough late in the fight, you're a fake Mexican. You really didn't want to fight. And Tito wins it, right? So when you play to the perceived weaknesses, it is often career death. Ryan Garcia couldn't come out and look like he did tonight. Everyone's going to go, just like you did, Paulie. Boom, steroids, right? It fits into, or the partying, or this or that. He fell into exactly the kind of performance he couldn't have tonight. Am I wrong? Am I over-exaggerating?
No, you're right, Jimmy. Like I said, all that, and when you look at the scorecards, they would have gave him the decision if he just tried a little bit.
Right. It was closer than it should have been on those scorecards.
Two out of three scorecards gave him that had a very close, a couple of rounds difference, and he's going to win that fight. You know what I'm saying? So it's. You just had to try a little bit, and you could have robbed the guy. They were trying to rob Romero.
They were waiting for you to come on, help us, help you,
help me, help. The judges were telling him, help me, help you. He didn't do it,
Right. But this idea
that's Jerry Maguire, right?
Right.
Help me, help you.
Exactly. But this idea that all the critics of Ryan Garcia tonight feel justified going, yeah, see, look, you know what I mean? And it was exactly
the good news for Ryan is he's got enough nut huggers and blowhards that it's actually going to be fun looking at the excuses they'll make. That's going to be part of the entertaining part of my night before I go to sleep. Looking for the comments to see all the excuses.
He got beat by a naturally smaller guy whom you said had no momentum going into this fight. He lost it because of a lack of
momentum.
Yeah,
momentum.
Right, and he lost in a way that once again. Can't take your bullets home with you, right? You can't take your punches home with you. If you don't throw them, what the hell were we doing in the gym the whole time? Yeah. This lack of urgency.
That's what Derrick James was trying to tell my brother, right?
Right. Yeah. What did we do this whole time?
Not motivate the guy.
Right. But this idea that Paulie, you and I have seen fighters past their prime. but for God knows how many years. You guys have we trained with them, we've been with them, whatever. Sometimes the chin goes, right? Sometimes they've taken too many shots and man, they get real chinny at the end of their careers. Most of the time, they can't pull the trigger. That's when somebody's shot is you're looking at them and normally they'd pull that trigger and they freaking don't. And it's this idea that Ryan Garcia in not pulling the trigger looks more shot than a Devin Haney who looked awkward, didn't do a whole lot. Ryan looked a lot worse.
No, I don't. I think that was just a mental block. I don't think it was a shot.
Right.
A mental block, like I don't want to do this. It was more like I don't need this in my life. I want to be anywhere else in the world but here. You know, they brought me to the ring in this Batmobile. It's a show. I want to be part of the show, but I don't actually want to fight. And when he got knocked on his ass, he was like, dude, I really don't want to be here. You know, and he acted like it, you know, and it was like, you know, you can, don't get me wrong, when there's a lot of fanfare, you know, the videos and everything, Times Square, you can get caught up, but it's part of being a star is knowing how to handle that. You know, it's part of being a top level athlete in general is knowing how to handle that because that's going to come with being a top level athlete. You know, you can get sensed of all that, but then you got to get in the ring and fight. I can remember when I fought in the Etihad Stadium on the co-main event to Ricky Hatton. I had this huge ring walk, and it was in a soccer stadium, and it was 57,000 people in the stadium. And you know, I'm the co-main event, and I was the IBF world champion. I was going to fight Hatton after this fight after I won. And the ring walk there was a lot of energy, but it was a long ring walk because we're walking through the stadium. Right. I remember thinking, I got to the ring, and Eddo's waiting for me across the ring, and I'm like, dude, I got to fight. What am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, I got so caught up in the whole fanfare of the ring walk and this whole, like, party-esque atmosphere. There's a party for everybody else but me. Like, I actually got to fight, bro. Everybody else is partying. You know what I mean? Like, so you can get lost in there. But part of being a professional, part of being you want to be a star in general is you got to know how to compartmentalize the fanfare with the fact that you are a fighter. You got to have that gladiator mentality when you get in there. Got to keep that mean streak in there, and Ryan had no mean streak tonight.
Before we go, it's been a great half hour breaking down this card. Do you remember a show on ESPN that was called The Top 5 Reasons You Can't Blame?
Yes,
they would pick certain things, and it was a great show, dude.
Yes.
I love that.
A lot of dynamic points made on that show, man. Yep.
Right, and really good stuff. Yep. There was one, the top 5 reasons you can't blame the Buffalo Bills for losing 4 straight Super Bowls.
I remember that one. Yep.
Right, you remember that one.
Yep.
And one of them said, teams like Dallas are used to a lot of press and being, you know, a lot of cameras on them, and they lost to the New York Giants, Washington Redskins, and the Dallas Cowboys twice. Major market.
NFC East was rough.
NFC East was rough. Those guys are used to this kind of pressure. They're used to reporters all over. And one of the players from Buffalo went, dude, I'm from Buffalo. I wasn't used to anybody caring about us till we got to the Super Bowl. And then it was like all the media and like, dude, Deion Sanders, he lives there. He lives in the media. He doesn't care. So it's this idea that if you live in this, you're a professional, bro. Like, all right, it's a Super Bowl, but it's another game to us, man.
Handle it. Yeah, hey, man. No, Rick James was from Buffalo. He handled it. You know. So
You know
what I'm saying? Like, you gotta know how to handle. If you're good enough to be there, you gotta also be mentally good enough to stay there.
Act like you've been there.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Right. Act like you've been. Act like this is normal.
And this is part of the fanfare. It's part of being a high level athlete or star is knowing how to compartmentalize those things.
Once again, before we go, the stock of the 3 winners, we got Rolly Romero, of course, winning in the main event in an upset. Devin Haney winning, but looking substandard. Teofimo Lopez, stock went up tonight. Is that your impression of the fight? The Teofimo Lopez looked consistently talented.
But he's still an enigma, man. As good as he looked tonight, I still feel like there was more he didn't show. I feel he never got past third gear. But that's how good he is. To beat a good fighter like Barbosa, who also never really got past third gear, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's one of those where tonight, as Paulie said, on paper, it was supposed to deliver. You can't always deliver, but Ryan Garcia laying a big egg before a massive fight set up against Devin Haney. Probably not going to see that anytime soon, but how will Devin Haney look next time? And can Teofimo Lopez string these performances together and give us a consistency we crave? For Paulie Malignaggi, everybody behind the scenes, I'm Jimmy Smith. Remember, we are post-fight tomorrow. You never want to miss a post-fight show with Canelo Alvarez without Paulie Malignaggi yelling and screaming from home. It's going to be great. Join us then right here on ProBox TV. Find out why millions are watching.
Easter egg for Ryan Garcia.